Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra, Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On this segment, Challenge Cup Match Day 3 preview. We've got a ton of games to get in through. It's midweek action for NWSL. But first, a quick reminder to follow us on Twitter for all news and updates at Attacking Third. We also have a TikTok. You can watch cool highlights, some segment breakout videos from us here at Attacking Third. You can watch us at video as well at youtube.com/Attacking Third. Be sure to subscribe. Go subscribe to the TikTok, everybody. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to catch all kinds of good stuff. And who knows, maybe Lisa and I will surprise you on the TikTok once in a while. So go ahead and check it out. How you doing today, Lisa? You excited we got a TikTok?
Does that mean we're doing like an in-sync dance, like a choreographed dance? Is that what's on TikTok? I am a grandma. I am a grandma when it comes to this stuff.
It might just be me like reacting to things too. Like I might just hit someone with a "oh no," and then like a clip of like a clip of somebody getting magged or something. We'll see. I don't know. People can let us know. Let us know what you want to see. We always love to hear.
We can get creative on there for sure. We can get creative. We can get creative with this. We can get creative with that. Sandra, I'm good. We got midweek action, which it comes fast and it comes hard because it's Friday, Saturday. Maybe 3 days off for these players to travel, get a little rest and recovery in. And same as us, for us as preview recaps, this broadcasters traveling back to cover some games, and then more matches this weekend. So it's quick. This is when things get intense and dicey because now we're also seeing match day 3. So we're getting a little bit of repeat so far in the tournament. Teams are now playing away for the first time. They're now playing at home for the first time. There's a lot of ups and downs, but I'm hyped for this and hyped to chat to you about it. How are you on this lovely midweek?
I'm doing okay. I'm like approaching this with enthusiasm because there's some news that we're going to get into where I'm sure you and I are going to be like, what is going on? But I'm still approaching this with some enthusiasm because this is our first opportunity to do a bit of midweek action for NWSL. This is the first week in Challenge Cup tournament where they're going to, some teams are going to be on a quick turnaround, like you mentioned already. Let's maybe look at a rundown of the slate of the matches that are going to be taking place this week on Wednesday, March 30th. It's going to be Orlando Pride versus Gotham FC, Chicago Red Stars versus Racing Louisville, Washington Spirit versus North Carolina Courage. All these games kicking off at 7:30 Eastern Time. Houston Dash versus Kansas City Current at 8:30 Eastern Time. And we have, again, once more, NWSL action after dark. Portland Thorns versus Angel City at 10 p.m. Eastern. So a lot of games for folks to take a look at over Wednesday. 5 games total. We're going to be missing out on a couple teams, but there's a huge slate here that we're going to have to get through, and we're going to let everybody know about how we feel about some of these matches, maybe a couple key ones to watch on Wednesday in case you can't watch all of them. And we're also going to go ahead and give you our picks because we like to do that here on Attacking Third. But before we take a deep dive into these matches, my gosh, Lisa, we're going to have to go through a little bit of an injury report here before we start getting into these matches. And I'm just like, geez, it just feels like one after the other.
And it's not just like a light injury report, which happens. Players get nicks and nabs, and we see them on the injury report, questionable or out. But we have a couple SEI, season-ending injuries that we have to touch on. It's devastating. These poor players. I feel so bad for them, Sandra.
Yeah, I think we should just hop into it, just sort of how we've been getting the news as it's been rolling out. Over the last couple of weeks, there has been some announcements, I guess, so to say, especially coming out of week 2 action for not just any players, but really key players on respective club teams. I guess we're going to start with this first one. During the Orlando Pride and North Carolina Courage match, if you took a listen to our recap episode, we did touch on this briefly, in that Marta was a player that had to make an exit from that match very early on. She went down right around the half-hour mark or so, just prior to that. And the scenes from that, you just sort of look like, well, that doesn't look like it's a simple injury. It looked like something that was more complex based on the player's reaction. The veteran that she is, she went out and still tried to give it a go. But unfortunately, when she tried to make an additional cut, went down immediately once more, waved over trainers, asked to be subbed out of the game. And now post game or post match, now into a new week here, we have an update from Marta herself. She actually took to Instagram to go ahead and put a post up, letting fans know. She writes, I'm writing this post to inform you that in our game on Saturday, I suffered a knee ligament injury and I will need surgery. Unfortunately, I will be out of the field for a while. This will be another chapter of my story, and I'm sure I'll come out of it stronger. Now it's time to focus my recovery to get back to doing what I love most, representing my country, my people, and my teams. Thank you all for the constant support. And then she put a bunch of heart emojis, right, representing Brazil or Orlando Pride. But we saw that come out, Lisa, and of course we were like, oh, like you just hoped it wasn't the worst, and then it comes out to be what that is. So it's tough to sort of see that from a legend of the game having to go out like that with an injury.
Super devastating. And when this injury happened for Marta, she jumped up and landed. And as soon as she landed, she took to the ground. She did continue playing for a little bit, which that happens so many times with injuries because it's an initial pop and then you can continue playing, but ultimately coming out. And this is probably one of the most this is one of the more vague announcements than the other two that we have to report on, because it just says a knee ligament injury and that she will be out of the field for a while. So that's unsure if that's season-ending injury or if that's just a few months of the Challenge Cup. There's a number of different things. I mean, Becky Sauerbrunn, she had a knee scope done, which is a minor knee surgery, and you can walk and run almost days after that surgery happened. So Becky Sauerbrunn hoping to be back by the regular season, but unsure about Marta for Orlando Pride. But this is a really big loss for the Pride. And
Absolutely.
We'll touch on it.
Yeah, it's coming directly from the player, right? So like you mentioned and touched on, it just kind of, it's vague in the sense where she's just referring to it as a right ligament, or excuse me, as a knee ligament injury. If I'm sure if people want to try to find highlights, they'll try to identify what knee it is or what knee it is or what that means, but nothing from the club specifically yet. But I'm assuming that once she does have surgery, I'm sure there will be some type of update on the success of it or more details on that. But we had other clubs announcing similar injuries. Unfortunately, Tierna Davidson from the Chicago Red Stars, the club announcing that she also has sustained a season-ending injury, a torn ACL. Unfortunately, this one coming via way of training, so not necessarily something that was impacted during that match week 1 game where they had a win against the Houston Dash, but something coming out post match, sustained during training, and unfortunately, she will no longer be part of the Chicago Red Stars 2022 season. And when we're talking about players like Tierna Davidson, we obviously, look at the huge impact that's going to have for a club like the Chicago Red Stars. But we're looking at a young talent in Davidson and what that means for potentially the United States women's national team rosters that are going to be announced pretty soon.
Yeah, it's all true because of that. And Davidson not on those rosters because of an injury. This is another huge devastating loss for Chicago. This is a player that Chris Petroselli, head coach of the Red Stars, built his entire defense around in Tierna Davidson. And now to not have that, she didn't play in match day two for the Challenge Cup. She was out for that one. And Petroselli saying that it didn't look too good, that she would not be playing. And then this announcement coming out about her ACL, just speedy recoveries for Marta and for Davidson.
Yeah, and then we have one more to get through here. I guess another unfortunate season-ending injury. This one coming via Kansas City Current about Lynn Williams, stating that Lynn Williams also will have surgery after suffering an acute injury to her right leg during the opening match against Racing Louisville FC. So this one coming out from directly from actual match play. So maybe the player feeling some uncomfortability, right? Bringing that up to trainers and physicians. And our assumption here is that, based on that, further testing is done, right? And then you you get to see that unfortunately it's another ligament issue. So another huge loss. I mean, this is a player that this franchise just acquired over the offseason.
Yeah, this is a really big loss. Lynn suffered this injury in the opening match of the Challenge Cup on March 18th when Kansas City faced Racing Louisville. It was actually towards the end of that match. She came down and came off the field, and Kansas City had used all of their substitutes and their sub windows, so they couldn't replace her. And Kansas City played down the final handful of minutes or so of that match. And Williams on the injury report list for match day 2. And now this news comes out. Just really devastating to see. This is not that common to have 3 really influential players getting essentially the same injury, 2 ACLs and one a knee ligament injury specified over the course of a 2-week span. Is that too much impact in the off season? Is that training their bodies too hard? Was preseason too long? There's a number of different factors going into this, and I hope sports science is on top of this. These players all wear tracker jackers, what we called them in college, little devices that track their movement, which leg they push more, which foot they start their sprint with, which foot they land on more, every single impact of that. And I hope that the studying is immediately starting to figure out why this happened, if they were contact or non-contact. This is devastating. 3 huge players in the league.
Yeah, massive. And obviously we're likely going to touch on these players a little bit more as we start getting into these previews and some of our picks, right, for the upcoming midweek action. Let's chat a little bit about those games that are going to be taking place again, March 30th on Wednesday. Let's take a look at maybe what we are considering our biggest matches to key in on this week. We've got 2 that we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive on here. We're going to start with Washington Spirit versus North Carolina Courage. They're going to be kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Spirit still on the hunt for their first win in Challenge Cup. North Carolina Courage, the team that's undefeated, right? But also the only team that has 2 wins in this Challenge Cup tournament. Do you have any team that you're leaning or sway towards one way or the other, Lisa? Who would you be picking in this one and why?
I think I'm going to pick North Carolina Courage in this one. They are coming off 2 back-to-back wins. They're not only leading the East region, but they're leading the entire Challenge Cup with 6 points in the standings. This is not a rebuild year for Sean Nahas at any point. And we've seen the first week from North Carolina, it was like, oh, okay, this is fun. It was almost surprising to see what they were able to do. And then the consistency carrying over into match day 2 in the second week of play, they outshot Orlando Pride 17-7 in that match. And the variety of attacking patterns that we saw from North Carolina Courage and Kiki Pickett being a big part of that, attacking down the middle, using the flanks to send crosses in, taking defenders on 1v1, getting in behind back lines, quick transition. It was a lot of diversity in the attacking patterns, which makes North Carolina so dangerous and having that variety of attacking patterns. When you look at Washington Spirit, they were without Emily Sonnet last week. So Amber Brooks stepping in, and Amber Brooks getting 2 yellow cards and a red in last week's match for Washington Spirit. So center back is a bit of a question mark for Washington Spirit right now. That injury report is not out yet about Emily Sonnet and who will be in for Washington Spirit, but Washington's also a team that we've seen progressively get better. Their first week, 0-0 draw. Second week, it was a 1-1 draw. They got on the board, but they also conceded a goal, a penalty kick nonetheless. And I think we're seeing strides from that team happening. We're seeing more shot production from Hatch, Sanchez, Trinity Rodman. And I think Rodman has gotten better from week 1 to week 2. They're also a young team in Washington Spirit. And so this quick turnaround from a Friday, Saturday match to a Wednesday match, I think they could pose big trouble for North Carolina, but I still give North Carolina the nod on this one. Sandra, what about you? North Carolina, Washington, young squad, team coming off of 2 wins in North Carolina. Who do you have?
You know what? I'm going to go the opposite way. I like all the arguments that you made for North Carolina Courage. And to be honest, I was tiptoeing a little bit back and forth on whether or not I was going to go with a draw or an actual win or loss in this one. But I'm going to be going towards a win, and I'm going to be giving that to the home side in this one in Washington Spirit. I'm in agreement with what you just said. I feel like if amongst all of the 12 teams that we're watching play in these early weeks of Challenge Cup, I'm looking at the Washington Spirit, and I can see progression. I could see growth. I could see it in the numbers. I could see it in the way in which they're playing, especially if we're just looking at the numbers, how they went from that week 1 scoreless draw to this sort of 1-1 draw in the previous week against Gotham. numbers far, far different in terms of shots on goal, shot attempts overall, right? Their XG out through the roof practically. So I'm looking to see some more growth and involvement in those areas. I'm going to hope that maybe they get not just one, maybe a couple goals in this game against North Carolina Courage. But I'm with you on the back lines in this one. There's some question marks for the defense there versus North Carolina Courage. There's not. They have their captain in Abby Urseg, who's really good at holding things down there and helping sustain attacks and absorbing pressure. And when we're looking at this attacking presence of Washington Spirit, they're showing us that they can get into the mix of that final third, but maybe they aren't producing the breakout goals that we thought we were going to be seeing. But again, we're in the early days of Challenge Cup. Maybe this is the game where we're going to see that. And there's something about watching these two teams play a little bit. I think when we saw it during last year in 2021, the Spirit sort of rising up to a certain level of play when it came to going against a team like the Courage, a team that had such, a winning culture behind them and such big names on their roster and on the pitch. And it's a little bit different for this team this year, right? We talk about Coach Nahas and how he doesn't call it a rebuild, he called it a retool, and what we're going to see. So this is the Courage side that still has some of those names, right? Where I talked about an Ursig, but there's also somebody like a Denise O'Sullivan who pulls those strings in the midfield. So I think, yes, could this end in a draw? Sure, but I don't think it's going to end that way. I'm going to give it a win, and I'm going to give it to the Spirit. I just think they're going to have more in their attack to make up for what they don't have in the back line at the moment, and I also think they have a little bit more in their midfield compared to the Courage. So I'm going to go Spirit in this one. We do have a second match, though, Lisa, that we have as our biggest matches this week. We're going to take a look at Portland Thorns FC versus Angel City FC. And we wanted to bring this one up because similar to the East region game that we're bringing up, sort of having implications in that group, if Spirit get a win, it can maybe sort of tip some things a little bit. And honestly, in this West region with this game in particular, OL Reign not playing midweek, this can also shake some things up in the region here too. So when you're looking at the Thorns versus Angel City, Lisa, tell me who you got and why.
I have Portland Thorns winning this one. We talked about some question marks in the first biggest matchup between Washington and North Carolina. There are question marks here with Angel City. Savannah McCaskill, she received a red card last week, so she is out versus Portland Thorns, and this is a huge loss for Angel City. We've seen the development of Savannah McCaskill in the midfield for Angel City. Her ability to play make, get on the ball, dribble at defenders, slot passes through to Kristen Press, Tyler Lucy up top. So now missing that connecting presence in the midfield for Angel City is going to hurt Angel City. And we've also seen from Portland Thorns over the last 2 weeks incredible growth. We're seeing a new formation in a 3-5-2 being pulled out by head coach Wilkinson for the Thorns. And they played that in their preseason matches. So they had time and competitive matches with that formation. In their first week, there were some holes also going up against OL Reign that can find the holes. However, in Portland's second match, we saw those holes be filled. We saw them problem solving on the pitch in real time with Klingenberg and Krieger out wide being those wing backs in the midfield, making them 5 up. They create these 2v1 opportunities on the flanks for Portland Thorns that make them really dangerous. They also have Sophia Smith and Christine Sinclair, the front two that are really fun to watch. The veteran Canadian international and the younger Sophia Smith, the United States international. These two players together are growing tremendously. It's really fun to watch. I have Portland Thorns winning this one, but I think the biggest matchup to watch in this one is Emily Menges, the center back for Portland Thorns, because without Becky Sauerbrunn, Menges has stepped up and done a tremendous job as that central center back in the 3-back for the Thorns. She'll be matched up with Kristen Press. This matchup is going to be really, really interesting. If Menges can focus entirely on Press defensively, finding that balance between staying tight to her so she doesn't receive the ball in turn, but also giving Press a little bit of space. That way she can't just run past you with her quick step and acceleration. So the matchup between Menges and Press, huge, but I still take Portland Thorns in this one.
I'm with you on that. I think the loss of McCaskill is going to weigh heavily, I think, for Angel City. We've only seen 2 weeks in action of this expansion side, but the chemistry that's been building between a player like McCaskill and a player like Press, I think is showing a lot of promise. And I think without McCaskill in the midfield, it's going to leave even more holes that we're starting to see in some of these expansion sides in that middle third. And I'm going to be going with the Thorns in this one as well. I'm also choosing them to win over Angel City, maybe try to take a hold of that West region for at least a little bit of time, right? Until All Rain come on back and play a match of their own. But I just like what we've been seeing from the Thorns, and I've enjoyed what we've been watching from Angel City as well. But I'm going to want to see something else from this expansion side as well. I think Freya Coombe is going to have her first little challenge, right, in terms of making some team adjustments. What is this team going to look like without a McCaskill? Who is going to slot in her place? Is that going to trigger other adjustments across the pitch? Are we going to see Simone Charlie get a start in this game versus coming off of the bench? I mean, we saw this player come off and impact that game immediately.
Yes.
Ended up leading the team, and I believe it was total shots or chances created in terms of the stats that she was picking up, just coming in with a second half performance. So I'm going to be looking for that, even though I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm going with the Thorns, but I want to see these adjustments from Freya Coombe. I want to see this team and how they respond to a well-adjusted team like Portland Thorns. Let's take a look at some of these other matches, Lisa. We've got 3 more to get through here. Orlando Pride versus Gotham FC. A little bit of a homecoming, maybe. Like, let's chat a little bit about why there's some different angles coming into this one, and tell me who you're picking and why.
So homecoming, you alluded to it. Don't leave the people hanging. Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris traded from Orlando to Gotham in the offseason, and now Gotham heads to Exploria Stadium in Orlando. Definitely a homecoming for them. I'm interested how the fans are going to react. So that's why I'm really excited to tune into this, because Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris are loved, especially in Orlando, for a lot of different reasons. But now they're on the opposition. Are they going to be greeted with some signs and screaming and shouting and love, or is there going to be a bit of a rivalry there developing between these two? We also saw some drama between these two off the pitch last week, so can we see that again? Will that happen a little bit? But we mentioned at the top of this episode, Marta, without Orlando Pride is without Marta, suffering a knee ligament injury surgery. She will not be here. This is a really big loss for Orlando Pride. They saw what they had to do without Marta for about 60 minutes in last week's match, and it didn't look good. It wasn't great. Sydney Leroux was invisible. I think we're going to need to see a lot more from Leroux for this to happen. And Gotham, they struggled at the start of this Challenge Cup, but they've progressively gotten better. And we've seen moments of increase. I think Scott Parkinson, head coach for Gotham, said something along the lines of, it was just a slight step forward last week. It's only small progressive steps we're seeing from Gotham. However, the loss of Marta, huge for Orlando. I have Gotham winning this one in this big matchup back at Exploria Stadium.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking a look at these 2 teams, and I'm sure there's people are going to be looking for those angles of, like, facing off against your old team, right? What's that going to look like? I'm choosing Gotham in this one to get a result. I'm not too sure if it's going to be a draw, if the Pride are going to have enough in them for a 3rd week on a short rest in a row to try to go out there and try to play that kind of scrappy, physical match and have it pan out in a result for them, even if it would be a draw. I just think that there's a little bit more in Gotham's arsenal to come out with the result, and that result being a win. I'm going to be going with Gotham because, again, similar to the Spirit, my reasons for picking the Spirit, just sort of seeing the transition and the improvement week to week from this Gotham side. And I think against Orlando Pride, with some former Orlando Pride teammates on there, there's always a little bit of extra oomph that you're bringing when you're coming and visiting your former team. So I'm going with Gotham FC in this one. I'm going to be curious to see, again, we're talking about adjustments, what Amanda Cromwell is going to be doing and what this Orlando Pride team and how they're going to adjust with losing such an impactful player like Marta. And I think we're going to find out real quick what it's going to look like in this match. But I'm going Gotham with this one as well. Chicago Red Stars versus Racing Louisville FC. We're getting into the Central region now to close out this episode. We've got two more games to get through. When we're looking at Chicago Red Stars versus Racing Louisville, quick turnaround again for both these teams. Red Stars going to be hosting this one. Lisa, what are you looking at in terms of this match? And is anyone going to come out on top of this one?
As we mentioned, a number of injuries. Tierna Davidson, center back for Chicago, out for this match, out for the rest of the season, ACL tear. So, but we saw that last week. Kayla Sharple slotting into the center back role for Chicago and doing a nice job, honestly. Kayla Sharple's got minutes last year, and she I think played really well alongside Zoe Morse and Tatum Malazzo in the back line for Chris Petroselli. Because of this, we're also looking at a team in Racing Louisville that has had really good moments. We saw a spark from Jess McDonald last week when Racing played, getting on the board for the first time with Racing Louisville. Emily Fox, however, also went out in that game with an injury on Friday. Not sure her status at this point, the time of this recording, if she'll be in there. This is going to be a big battle in the Central region. I have Chicago winning it. I think that their attacking prowess is stronger than Racing Louisville's attacking prowess right now. And this might be a shootout. We might see a number of goals, a 2-1, a 3-2 in this one, but I still think Chicago comes out on top.
I love that. No defense, all vibes from Lisa.
I'm here for it.
So of all the matches, you're like, this might be the one that's going to be the shootout. I like that. I don't know if it's going to be a shootout, but I'm still gonna go with a pick here, and I'm gonna, after 3 weeks, I'm gonna go with the home side. I'm gonna say that Chicago's gonna come out with an actual win in this one. Yes, Tierna Davidson is a massive loss for the Chicago Red Stars side. There's no doubting that, and having somebody like Kayla Sharple is able to come on in and slot in right away for somebody like her, I think is a benefit, right? Maybe a little bit of an X factor for the Chicago Red Stars side. Probably when we're looking at defenders that Chicago has on their roster, could argue maybe the most informed at the moment was a player who went on loan during some of the off season in W League and played in Australia with Adelaide United. Saw some time in the playoffs there and came back with the Chicago Red Stars in time to unfortunately be able to slot in due to an injury. So we're gonna see maybe some growth from that, or at least that's what I'm gonna be looking for. After getting that first run out with the team, maybe having a little bit more comfortability in terms of being that central figure in this sort of fluctuating 3-back that we've been seeing from the Chicago Red Stars. It's gonna be a test, right? With somebody like Jessica McDonald, probably barreling down and gunning for that back line. But I'm going to say that Chicago Red Stars might come out on top on this one. I think the weather might be another bit of a little weather match for folks who's looking at the radar, because again, I'm also game time decisions. I'm also like, do I make the drive out to these matches or not? Like, what's going on here? We had a lot of wind and cold, and now apparently we're going to have a little bit different temperatures, but a lot of rain. So we'll see what happens in this one and see if you and I are correct. Lisa, last one for the Central region. Houston Dash versus Kansas City to close things out of our episode here. Tell me who you're looking at. What's the result? You got a win, loss, or draw, Lisa, and why?
So Kansas City, another player or another team that's suffering a big loss in forward Lynn Williams, ACL tear, so she'll be out. We've also seen limited minutes over the last 2 weeks from Sam Ewis, a trade in the offseason, both players coming from North Carolina that were hoping to make a really big impact with Kansas City. We've seen growth from Kansas City. Goals last week. I mean, they got on the board first. They got on the board early last week. However, it was a tough matchup, really tough, coming down to the final minutes of the game, a bit of scrappy play from Kansas City, and now going up against a team like Houston Dash that are just coming off of a come-from-behind win over Racing Louisville. They were down 2-0 at half, and they ended up winning 3-2. With Houston, James Clarkson needs to play Sophie Schmidt higher. Looking at the starting lineup, you'll be able to tell.
Lisa, call them out.
You'll be able to tell how this game is going to work out based on who Clarkson starts and where on the pitch. We're starting to see fireworks up front from Rachel Daly, Nichelle Prince, and Maria Sanchez. I think that's going to continue. I think the quick turnaround for Houston is actually going to be really beneficial for them, coming off of that influential win over Racing Louisville. I have Houston winning this one, but it'll be a battle, I think. But I'm excited to see the forward play combination between Daly, Prince, and Sanchez.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think that has the potential to be one of the most dynamic and exciting attacks in the league. And I think we're just got a taste of it, right? From that week 2 match where they had that awesome come from behind win against Racing Louisville. Kansas City, though, we're going to have to see this team maybe not just make adjustments, but maybe lean into that. We saw that a little bit already when they had to make those adjustments against the Chicago Red Stars. They went in to SeatGeek Stadium knowing that they weren't going to have a Lynn Williams, and then we saw them play a little bit of a different type of attacking game, more methodical than maybe just sort of whipping in crosses and constantly getting into the final third and just sort of getting into the shot after shot after shot after shot. We didn't see that with a Lynn Williams-less Kansas City current, right? We saw a little bit of different play, and I think that maybe that adjustment that they already make is an adjustment that they're going to have to lean into a little bit. And quite frankly, I think that could be something that frustrates a side like Houston Dash. So while I'm high on the Dash after their week 2 win, I'm not too sure if they're going to be able to not find themselves frustrated and be able to come out with a win. I actually think this one is going to come out and shake out to a draw between these two sides, but I hope it's an exciting draw. For sure. So we'll see what happens, and we'll come back on here on the recap and obviously chat about if we were correct or incorrect. That's the other thing that we love to do here at Attacking Third. Thank you all so much for joining us and listening to our preview and our picks. Follow us on Twitter and now on TikTok at Attacking Third for more. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcast shows. We're also available as video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/Attacking Third. And we'll be back on Friday with recaps of these matches and previews of the weekend slate of games. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.